Welcome, everybody. I'm delighted to have you with us today. We're going to have a really interesting discussion about GemGenève and the Designer Vivarium curated by jewellery historian Vivienne Becker. I would just like to introduce you to the panelists. Firstly, the co-founders of GemGenève, Ida and Thomas Faerber. Welcome, great to have you with us, Ida and Thomas.
Thank you for having us, David.
And last but definitely not least, Vivienne Becker, a jewellery historian and well-known journalist and trends forecaster. Vivienne, welcome to the webinar today.
Hello. Thank you. Thanks, David, for hosting us.
Good. So we're going to show you now a video that was prepared for the first edition of GemGenève in 2018 to give you a sort of a flavour of what the show has been like. So Jay, would you like to show us the video?
Antique jewellery is a really huge part of GemGenève. In fact, I'd say it's really the heart and soul, and it reflects the core of the industry. We have perhaps the finest dealers in antique and 20th century and so-called vintage jewellery here at GemGenève, with a huge variety of styles and eras and designers. Vintage jewellery, you often find the great heritage stones that we also see here at GemGenève, and it also reflects that we have the contemporary designers here who we hope will become the antiques of the future.
Great, well, thank you very much. So I'd just like to kick off the webinar with a discussion to introduce GemGenève to everybody. And so I'd like to just to start off by speaking with Ida and Thomas a little bit about the show. The next edition of GemGenève will take place between the 5th and 8th of November in Palexpo in Geneva near the airport. Let me start with Thomas. Thomas, can you just explain a little bit to the viewers about GemGenève, what the show is, and the kind of offering that it presents to buyers and collectors?
Well, the idea of the show is, since my co-founder Ronnie and myself, we were not always happy about how we were treated in other shows, is really to do a show by exhibitors for the exhibitors. So we are both. We are exhibitors as well as managers of the show. So that gives us a better idea. I think we know better what we as stone or jewelry or whatever dealers, what we need, than the huge show organizations.
And could you tell us a little bit about the variety of product that is offered by the show? It's gemstones and jewellery, isn't it? Could you tell us a little bit about what is on offer?
Well, except for watches, I think really everything is on offer. Let's start with precious stones of all the varieties, and naturally including the top end, the emeralds, rubies, sapphires, and emeralds, and also naturally diamonds, all natural diamonds, natural colored diamonds, white diamonds, small diamonds, bigger diamonds, all variety of diamonds.
Okay. Now, obviously, we're living through unprecedented times due to the coronavirus pandemic. Can you tell us a little bit about the measures you'll be taking to protect visitors and exhibitors at the show in November?
We will follow to the letter what the Swiss authorities will ask us for. It's our priority, naturally, that we don't get any infections and that we are secure. I'm sure we will provide also masks, and that we will provide the hygienic tools we need.
And can I confirm that the show is expected to take place before the magnificent jewellery auctions of Sotheby's and Christie's? So that, if you like, it's a fabulous opportunity for buyers to be in Geneva, you know, coinciding with two separate events.
Yes, as in the past, it is just ahead of the auctions and overlaps actually with the viewings of the auctions. So visitors to Geneva can do both. They can visit our show and the auctions.
And one of the big appeals of GemGenève, of course, is the location, Geneva itself, which is very accessible, isn't it, for anybody from right across Europe, including by train?
Yes, in train or even plane if they work again, because you have a direct link to the train station from the airport, and you can literally do it in one day. If you're in a real hurry, you can come in the morning and you can leave in the evening. And if it's really a 10-minute walk maximum from the airport.
So if I could just speak with you very briefly about the backdrop of the market. This webinar comes at a very topical moment because just last night, Christie's announced that they had sold a 28.8 carat D-color diamond for just over $2.1 million, which was a world record price for any jewel sold in an online auction. What does that signal for the, if you like, the high gemstone market, particularly in the current environment?
I think the online auctions are very good for our trade because they give us confidence. I think 2 months ago, or when the lockdown started, and we really didn't know what would follow. Would it be a terrible crash? Would it be something like we experienced in 2008, where overnight we didn't know what was going to happen, and here now, thanks to the online auctions and also thanks to transactions which we have been doing, we know there is a market, and we know that it's a good market. It's naturally not like before because people can't travel, we can't go out for buying, we can't go out for selling as we used to. But I'm very confident about the future.
And I understand you also attended the Sotheby's live auction in Geneva on the 23rd of June. Just wondering what your impressions were of, say, some of the colored gemstone and antique jewellery items that were sold at that auction. What impression does that give of the health of the market?
I think it was a mixed auction. First of all, it was very little public because it was at Sotheby's head office here in Geneva. But David Bennett did it brilliantly. You know, he had his usual British humor, and everybody was, I think, in a good mood. And what we saw is that the average pieces, there were some unsold pieces, wherever the estimate wasn't right, you know, had difficulties, but good pieces did really, really well. And I think there was, for example, an emerald necklace with a historical provenance that sold quite a bit over the estimate. As a pearl dealer, natural pearl dealer, I was particularly pleased to see a pair of pearl drops of exquisite quality with an estimate of, I think, 80,000 going for 300,000, way over what I actually wanted to bid. Yes, it was a good, encouraging auction.
The natural pearl market seems to be going from strength to strength, doesn't it? Presumably a reflection of the increased rarity of natural pearls, perhaps due to pollution in the oceans.
Yes, there's no more fishing, or so little that it is not relevant for the market. And yes, it's again like other things, it's a top-end market that's really doing well. But if the estimate was right, every natural pearl was selling in that auction and also in other auctions.
And there was a Cartier piece, the final lot of the Sotheby's live sale that came out within estimate, I believe. What did you think about that? I mean, do signed pieces tend to outperform compared with non-signed pieces?
Oh, hugely. That was a classical, what I would say, classical Cartier piece of the 1925s. They made quite a few of them in England, in America, and especially in France. That same bracelet would have made a quarter of the price if it was not signed. Excuse me.
So turning to the Designer Vivarium, just last question, if I may, Ida and Thomas. Could you, perhaps for Ida, could you tell us a little bit about how the Designer Vivarium came about in the first place and your thinking at the time? This is prior to the first edition, which was in 2018. Ida.
Yes, of course. When we first started to think about how we would like to set up the GemGenève show, we of course wanted to have mainly dealers, but we also wanted a different show in the way we wanted to include new generation, young people. We have also the Head, which is a school here in Geneva that is participating. And talking while we were brainstorming, we naturally thought about Vivienne and her Vivarium, and we said, why could we not have a designer corner with some, really strong identities that would be curated by Vivienne, which would bring a new asset to a dealer's show in comparison to a very classical show like Hong Kong or other shows we do. It would be a nice mixture of visitors and also for the designers also to be in contact with a different clientele and to be able to. It's like all the different aspects of the business to allow us to connect and reconnect together, which we had a bit lost over the years, I feel, and which I feel in GemGenève we can really reconnect students, schools, dealers, professionals, privates, and historians, and they can all exchange. And the designers curated by Vivienne, of course, gives it the perfect fit.
Great, well, thank you very much. And that now neatly brings me to say hello to Vivienne. How are you today, Vivienne?
Yes, very good, very good. And actually, can I just say something? Because I know Thomas and Ida are too modest to say that it's because of the two founders, Thomas and Ronnie, that GemGenève was able to attract what I always call the inner sanctum of the jewellery world. And these are the creme de la creme of dealers in gemstones and particularly antique jewelry. And these are the dealers that normally the public would not have access to. And it's just to their credit that they were able to bring this extraordinary collection of experts. I think, really impassioned experts. And I think that's what sets GemGenève apart. Sorry, just to jump in there. And we saw in the video at the beginning that there was a wonderful memory for me because, again, one of the defining features of GemGenève, I think, was the extraordinary atmosphere. And you must agree, Thomas and Ida, it had an incredibly intimate, was obviously very professional. People were there to do business, but it was also about the exchange of knowledge, meeting friends, this continual exchange that is so much part of our world. And I know that Thomas and Ronnie really wanted to share that with a wider audience. And I believe they really succeeded.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
so
kind of a family affair. Sorry.
What we'd like to do next is show some still images of the Designer Vivarium. I think these images were taken in 2018. Let's have a look at some pictures now, just to give the audience an impression as to what the Designer Vivarium is like.
That's from 2019.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good image. Yeah.
Great, well, thanks so much for those pictures.
Yeah.
So, Vivienne, if I may start by asking you, if you like, the obvious question, what is the Designer Vivarium?
Well, as you saw, it's a special space within GemGenève that showcases the work of contemporary individual designer jewelers. And I think at the beginning, correct me if I'm wrong either, but at the beginning with our discussions, I knew that Thomas and Ronnie really wanted to nurture new talent. And so we discussed students' work, which in fact we do have, as you say, in the head display at GemGenève. But I felt that it would be more exciting for me, probably, to showcase the work of individual jewelers who are either private or under the radar, to create, I guess, a sense of discovery, and also to give those designers the right environment, a platform from which to show and talk about their work. So with Ida, we set about finding the designers, choosing and selecting them, which is it's actually not that easy, because so many very good designers are already very well known, and we wanted to give the opportunity to jewelers and designers who would normally never exhibit in a show such as GemGenève.
So I'd like to invite the viewers to please submit questions, because we are going to have a Q&A in the last 15 minutes or so of this 1-hour webinar. So please use the Q&A panel and freely submit your questions, and we'll get to those a bit later. Vivienne, could you explain a little bit about how the Designer Vivarium evolved from the original brief that you were presented with to your thinking in the subsequent editions?
Yes, well, I guess, you know, from the idea of nurturing new talent, it's turned into showcasing exceptional talent. Some of the designers are new, some are well established, but they've always stayed very much in the background. And I think it's evolved in that we look for, well, I look for really individual point of view, a strong, well-defined style. I like to find designers who've really got something to say through their work. Obviously, I think, Ida, you can jump in. We look for originality and innovation, but I guess the way it has evolved is that I'm really keen on showing a certain level of sophistication, I call it, or refinement in terms of both the concept but also the craftsmanship, because, you know, we love to see jewelry that's beautifully made. It's part of the traditions of Geneva, so that makes it especially relevant. And I think also, next to some of the most superb and mouth-watering antique jewelry in the world, I think we have to keep the standards as high as possible. And I think, as I said in that original video, I think Ida and I have the idea that the jewels in the Designer Vivarium might well be the antique jewelry of the future in years to come. So I think that's always one of the criteria that we apply.
And can you elaborate, Vivienne, about what you mean by individual designers? What is individuality in the terms of the Vivarium?
Well, it's, you know, designers who work either by themselves. Some are in duos. They're not part of a big brand. It's the absolute opposite of being corporate. Not that, you know, obviously I love the brands and work with them, but I felt also that we wanted to redress the balance. You know, the big brands have enormous marketing machines. They have huge opportunities to promote themselves, whereas the jewelers who work by themselves don't have the same opportunities. And by individual, I think perhaps the most important point is that it is one creative vision. It's a singular artistic creative vision that is then expressed through jewelry. It's not designed through committee or a design team. It's one person's vision of how they want to drive our jewelry world that after all has been going for thousands and thousands of years, and they want to be part of the great continuum of jewelry history. And they want, I think also, because, you know, obviously my background is in jewelry history and in the antique jewelry business. I always look for jewelers who have great reverence for the past and then use that past to really move forward and bring something new to our world. So it is, I think, if you agree, Ida, it's about the singular creative vision. Some of them, like Sean Gilson, Sean makes all the work himself, but mostly these are designers who work very closely with ateliers, many of them in Geneva. That relationship is also maybe a subject for another time. It's very interesting. But they work with the ateliers, with artisans, to bring that singular creative vision to life.
Could I now turn to Thomas and ask you how, if you like, this vision for the Designer Vivarium fits into your world of antique jewellery? I mean, what is the sort of continuum of time and space you have in mind here?
Well, it goes back, my original passion before I even started in the business was the Renaissance jewelry because of its originality and the figurines. And when you are in Dresden, it's just a wonderland. But yes, it goes back a lot. I think one of the oldest houses that is still in existence is Mellerio. I think they were founded in 1613. And then you have Chaumet, who were founded in 1780. Chaumet did some great exhibitions in Beijing, and the last one, I think, was in Monaco, with great historical pieces. And it goes on to the late 19th century, where Frédéric Boucheron was one of my heroes. I admire his work. I admire his personality. He did a lot for the trade at the time being. And then it goes on Lalique with a more floral, as you all know, Lalique naturally. And he, with his contemporaries like Weber, like Gautret, Fouquet, all fantastic and very new. And then we come to Cartier in the Belle Epoque until the Art Deco period, where that was totally new, the crazy 20s. They also made great creations in the 40s. You have Van Cleef and Arpels, naturally, who came up strongly in the 1940s with a very distinguished style. And after the war, I think it was Harry Winston who influenced the jewelry trade a lot. And so, and on. I could go on for more. It goes until today. But in between, there were in the 70s, 80s, they were interesting. One of them, I think, very little known, was Schulin in Vienna. I think Vivienne knows him. He's very
yes. Fabulous, yeah, very modern, very modern.
Very modern design. Yeah. And Hemmerle, I know the Hemmerle family very well. My father used to work with their grandfather when I worked. He was Stefan Hemmerle, and now it's Christian Hemmerle. I see they're doing quite well at auction also, and so on. And then we come to the early 80s, and there we have Jar, who influenced, as you may all know, a lot the contemporary jewelry.
So Thomas, with regard to say Jarre, I mean, I myself, having attended a number of high-value jewellery auctions, have seen how pieces by Jarre really outperform, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 times estimate often. Do you feel that Jarre, if anything, has contributed towards a new era for the individual jewellery designer?
Yeah, he definitely was the most important influence as of the 80s. In the early 80s, he had his first exhibition at the Academy of Design in New York, and you know, he's had other exhibitions. But he's also a very interesting person, very well read. You know, he's very, very bright brain. So. Yeah,
he really
first,
he challenges conventional views of design in so many ways, doesn't he? I mean, he uses often very unusual materials in his designs.
Yes, definitely. I think he was the first to use titanium. He also uses other metals which are not commonly used, like aluminium. His mix of stone, his sense of colors and color mixing is really unique. People try to get inspired by this, but they don't have the same the same genius. That's all I can.
He's an artist, a genius.
Yep.
If I could actually just switch very briefly to Vivienne on say Lalique. I know that you know a great deal about Lalique. A bit like Jarre, I mean, Lalique didn't always use very precious or valuable materials within his creations, did he? It was very much about the design.
No, not at all. And there was similar movements that Lalique at the time, he wanted to elevate the jewel from a trinket or just pure ornamentation to a work of art, which he really did. And then of course Joel of Jarre did exactly the same thing in the 80s. And yeah, you know, in terms of the Designer Vivarium, of course, it's really important because I really feel that Jarre opened up a whole new era of the cult of individuality of designers. Before that, it was just really only brands or mainly brands or you know, anonymous designers. And in the same way, Lalique did the same thing, or maybe before him, you know, Giuliano was perhaps the first art jeweler. But from the 80s, it's really true that Jarre has encouraged so many designers to go out on their own. Of course, he's influenced several generations of design. Yeah, and he created a whole new visual language for jewelry using not only the metals but gemstones that jewelers had neglected before, had sort of dismissed. So obviously colored sapphires, garnets, spinels, and he is an artist. He's a genius and an artist, and he used them in a painterly way. And the other huge difference I feel was that he introduced cultural references. He gave richness to jewelry. Before it was about kind of pure linear design. It didn't really have any narrative or any layers of meaning. And Jarre loves jewelry history, loves history, as you said, he's very cultivated, introduced this concept of cultural layers into jewelry, which has been one of the most important elements of contemporary jewelry design. And I think it's really because of him that we're able to assemble a group of individual designer jewelers. Don't you agree, Ida? I mean, it's that
absolutely,
the whole cult of the individual and the individual artistic expression that he's initiated and nurtured. And he's very supportive. He's very supportive of new talent.
If I could ask Vivienne and then Ida as well, is then part of the concept of the Designer Vivarium to find the, if you like, the antique jewellery of the future?
I like to think so. I like to think so, and also with my historical perspective, which I always use, and I know Ida does as well. You can't help it once you know about the past. You're always applying the criteria and also understanding that the jewels that were considered avant-garde, for instance, in the 1920s, have become the classics. I'm very interested in how that works. And yes, I think so. But it's also just to show the whole spectrum of our jewelry world that we all love and find so fascinating and rich, and to show that, you know, the passion and the dynamism of design that, as I say, keeps our industry moving forward. As I say, it's, you know, thousands of years old, and you always think there's nothing new, but there's always something new, and that's what we're looking out for.
Ida, what are your further thoughts?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with Vivienne. And I also think that all the, you know, the new technologies and internet have allowed people to get very much educated and to know much more than before, and also faster and in an easier way. So it gave access to a lot of people, to a lot of information about craftsmanship, about why such a jewel is so great. And a bit like in the art world, you know, I think there are the big masters, and if you, for example, start a collection, then at one point, once you have, there will be a lack of the great masters, and all these emerging talents with a strong vision that we really try to have in the Designer Vivarium are a true example of what can come out, and who you can collect and start to have interest in, and to understand better why actually they're different and special nowadays. Some of them have really amazing ideas in how they work and what new process they try to invent, and you know, one of them had invented a diamond. If you blow on it, it spells a little message. So, you know, all
kinds of innovations,
incredible things are emerging, and people appreciate them more.
And also, can I just say, David, also, in recent years, we've noticed that the antique jewelry dealers like Thomas or Symbolic and Chase, Siegelson, they're all now adding well-chosen contemporary jewelers to their repertoire. So they're just following through the line of history, bringing it right up to date. And I think that's and you agreed, Thomas, that's quite a new feature of the antique jewelry business, to bring the history right up to date.
Well, we will have to. We definitely have to, even in our own company, because I think with collectors, the whole Asian world, and especially China, the Chinese learn very fast. They have very sharp eyes. They study a lot. There's so much demand, especially for the top end, that we will not be able to exist. When I started going to America in the early 70s, there was an abundance of goods. There was an abundance of goods in France, in England, in Italy, everywhere. You know, Art Deco wasn't even 50 years old. It was disregarded. So I think with the world becoming a one bigger world, the demand is so huge. So I can understand that people like retailers have to make their own modern jewelry also. Otherwise, we cannot survive.
Thank you, Thomas. Vivienne, if I could ask you, how do you choose which designers can participate in the Vivarium? What criteria do you?
You're laughing. Ida and I have been working on it intensely, especially the last few days, trying to firm up our selection for this year. Yeah, I think we're very fussy. We have very strict criteria about a designer having a strong point of view. So we want jewelry that doesn't look like everyone else's jewelry. We want them to have a real passion, a real vision for something that they want to express through their jewelry, the way they look at the way they use materials, form, craftsmanship, and as Ida said, you know, new technology, that mixture of new technology with age-old skills is very, very interesting. They also have to be under the radar, because we do like the visitors to GemGenève to have this sense of discovery, come to the show to find talent that they don't know about. So that's also, isn't it, one of the criteria. Craftsmanship, I guess it's an attitude, it's a spirit, it's a special spirit that we're looking for. It's a vision, yeah.
And Ida,
quite hard to define, and Ida's got superb eye and wonderful taste, so I'm very lucky. Very lucky.
Would you like to add to that at all? Ida, would you like to make any further comments on that?
How we choose? Just what we. Oh, I know. Ida always says, you know, would she buy it? Would she wear it? You know, we do think about that. You know, if you see something and you think, oh my gosh, I would love to own that. I think that's also a filter. Exactly. A filter we use. Yes. Yeah.
If I would be a collector, for example, would it make sense in my collection? What is it bringing to the jewelry world? Is it something different and new? We are trying, you know, to really search for people who stand on their own. And I like the word vision, who have their own vision. They're artists and they create. And I always think, you know, would I buy it? Would I put it in a collection if I would be a collector? Does it make sense? And if yes, we try. We select them, and I think the vision is for me the most important thing, to have a true individual and not too much inspired by others, to stand on its own.
Yeah, something original. And also it's that that I look for that kind of seamless combination of the concept with the materials. Yeah. And the craftsmanship. I think they have to work as a whole, because often you see a nice design and then it just looks like they put some diamonds on top, whereas I look for a jewel that kind of, if it's made with diamonds, it wouldn't exist, the design just wouldn't work without those particular materials. I think that's
Vivienne, can you give a few examples? I know you can't cover everybody. A few examples of the designers who did participate in the Vivarium over the last couple of years. And talk a little bit about, if you like, nationality and
nationality.
How important that is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really important, because obviously jewelry is universal. It speaks a universal language. It is totally global. Every culture, every civilization has its jewelry rituals and customs. And so I think it is really important that we try and assemble an international showcase of designers, and we have been lucky to do that. In the first year, we were very lucky to have Fabio Cellini, who's an incredible modernist designer from Rome. We've had two Russians. Ninochka was a discovery. They're a young design duo, two young guys who work in Moscow, and I think that they're totally original. They didn't have many pieces, but the pieces they brought were just absolutely knock out something very, very different. And I think it's also really important that we have a huge variety of different expressions, different styles, different designs. From Geneva, we have had Nadia Morgenthaler, who makes extraordinary earrings in particular. That's her speciality. She has her own high jewelry atelier in Geneva and launched her own collection just a few years ago. And she's one of those jewelers who really combines new technology, new structures with really traditional hand craftsmanship. And the jewels are very refined, very modern, at the same time romantic. I think I've got my list, so I don't want to miss out anyone. And then we added new designers last year, and the idea is to have some returning designers, maybe for 3 years, but each year to add a selection of new talent.
And Vivienne, and also Ida, if I may, how do you measure the success of the Designer Vivarium? Can you outline a few ways in which you gauge whether or not it's had an impact and whether or not it's benefited the participants?
Yeah, well, I think there were great crowds. I mean, we were always busy in the Designer Vivarium. Lots of people made a beeline to see the designers. I think that visitors absolutely love to meet the artists, to meet the designers, to talk to them, to have the chance to listen to them explain their point of view and their creative vision. And I think an unexpected byproduct of the Designer Vivarium, I think, was that they so enjoyed spending time with each other. And I think, like I understand it as a writer, I guess as a designer, it can be quite a solitary business, you know, sitting here designing. And I think they really, really enjoyed and benefited from meeting each other, exchanging ideas. It was a lovely atmosphere. I hadn't really thought of that. They also really loved to meet the stone dealers. They made great contacts, and we had amazing media coverage from our Whiz of a communications director, who's hiding somewhere here. Vidal. So you know, that was
Ida, is there anything you want to add to that? I mean, in terms of measuring the success of the Designer Vivarium, it's really a lot of it's around contact building, isn't it?
Yeah.
Introducing private buyers, for example, to individual designers.
Yeah, and it's funny, you could have probably feared, you know, that they would not go on well if you look at the competitive aspect, but that didn't really happen at all.
Not at all.
They really all, it was unanimous, said how much they enjoyed actually meeting all the other designers and exchanging ideas, discovering more the dealers' world, listening to the talks, and having the opportunity, you know, to show their work to both privates and professionals. So I think that was really one great aspect. And also I think they were all very, very happy about the coverage they get, because as Vivienne said, I think it can be quite a lonely journey, especially for a small, you know, small brand. There's a lot of investment. So I think they're very, very happy about the media coverage they get out there, and probably some contacts they made also. You know, maybe a dealer can do a little journey with a designer, and they can work together by, you know, the one has the stone, the other one has the idea, and then you do something together. So I think it's a fantastic hub to reconnect.
And Ida, could you give maybe just a few examples of standout pieces or jewels from your own perspective that you saw over the last?
Yeah. For sure. It's a bit of a tricky question, I must say.
I know, it's like choosing your children, your favorite children. I know, it's a difficult one.
I quite like, yeah, exactly. I love them all. But it's true, there was a jade and amethyst ring by Ninochka that was all over Instagram. I mean, I'm not the only one to have noticed that one. I think everybody loved that ring. Ming did a fantastic sapphire necklace, which you actually really have to see on because it just makes it live. Alexandra Jefford, I actually purchased 2 pieces for myself.
Good, did you?
Good. Sean Gilson also, you know, he works with antique shakudos. I also bought a pair of earrings for my own collection.
We have some pictures. We have images of Sean's.
Cora also did incredible with her.
Cora Shaybani.
Cora Shaybani did something amazing with
these are Sean. Sean is an American. Sean is an American artist goldsmith. Very quiet, very private, and again, it's been a joy. I just love these geometric gold. Are these the earrings that you bought, Ida? One of these?
No, I bought some shakudo ones.
Oh, the shakudo, okay.
Yeah, And Cora was saying she was using, you know, fluorescent diamonds. So it creating messages on bangles and on brooches.
Oh gosh, this is
diamonds.
So, if I could just intervene at this point.
Breaking news. You need to have a.
News. So, if I may move to Vivienne. Vivienne, can you tell us who will be participating in the Designer Vivarium in November this year?
Yeah, well, the breaking news, as we said, these are 2 jewels by the artist goldsmith Giovanni Corvaia, and I've admired his work for the longest time, and I think we're going to be very, very privileged that he's going to participate in the Designer Vivarium. He's a magician with gold, an absolute alchemist. He comes from the school of Padua of goldsmiths, which is a fascinating story, and you'll see he does just incredible things, including making a gold fur. So the strands of gold are just so incredibly fine. It's a wonderful. It is there's something mystical. There's something really mystical about his ability to work with gold, and I'm just absolutely thrilled that he's going to be part of the Designer Vivarium. And we also have a new jeweler from China. I was very keen to include Asia because they have such an appreciation for jewelry. This is Feng Jie, who works in Shanghai, and again has an artistic background, and her grandfather was painted for the emperor. And what's interesting about Feng Jie is that she's creating high jewelry for a younger market, and maybe it's an evolution perhaps of the style of the great Michel Ongoff-Carnet, who's a great friend, and I'm a huge admirer of Michel's work, and I think that Feng Jie has taken that concept and evolved it as something very new, very light. She uses new techniques, which calls floating settings. So the jewelry is light in weight and also in look, and it's got a kind of youthful energy to it. That high jewelry.
Vivienne, can I confirm that Ming and Alexandra Jefford will be back?
Yeah, Ming and Alex Jefford are coming back, Ninochka coming back. Alexander Tenzo, who's a Russian jeweler, very, very interesting. He was a gem hunter turned jeweler, and he is almost single-handedly set on a mission to revive Russian jeweled arts, particularly stone carving. And the jewelry, I think it's interesting, it's like him, it's quite introspective, quite quiet, you have to discover it. There's always a story, it draws you in, very, very beautifully made. Sean Gilson will be back. We also have a new designer, Aline de Bussigne, who's from Switzerland, is doing something very different. She has a wonderful attitude. She's dedicated to craftsmanship, to superb design. And then the others, we're still waiting for some confirmation, so I don't want to talk about the other possible new names, but hopefully we can, that's a surprise to come, we can reveal them
can you tell us anything about the new look or design or the layout of the Designer Vivarium this year?
I think Ida knows more. I think that's going to be the same. I mean, I think it was a wonderful concept that was designed by our art director at the time, Mark Bell. He created that look that you saw at the beginning. So it's one space, one dedicated space, but the booths are separated by what looks like Japanese screens. So there's a lot of lightness. It's very modern, very, very contemporary. And I understand we're going to keep to that same design because it worked very well.
Yeah, we're debating within the team, we're debating about the location.
Oh, okay, yes,
Because you remember in the first year, it was right in the middle of the fair.
Yeah.
And it attracted so much visitors and was so busy, and so that we felt for other exhibitors who pay a sizable amount for their booths, it was too much. So we put, in 2019, we put them all the way back near the bar area. And this year we're still debating, because it's really a center point of attraction, the whole designer area.
Thank you.
Thomas, could I ask you, in terms of, if you like, the context for the show, how do you see the role of the individual designer versus the big brands? I mean, do you sense, for example, that due to the impact of the coronavirus pandemic, that we may see greater consolidation in the global industry, you know, large luxury brands buying up smaller companies? Or do you think this can be a great time of creativity for the individual designers to flourish? Thomas, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think that the big brands, due to their power, due to their marketing skills, I think they will grow in the future. They have a potential to grow. I think the classical 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s retail jeweler is going backwards, because they don't have sometimes the followers in the family. It's too difficult, the rents are high, the staff is high. But I think there is definitely a niche for designers, for young people coming up. The jewelry business has always given also totally unknown people, always given a chance to raise. I think one of my examples is always Lawrence Graff. He came from the East End of London and started as a benchman. Look where he's now, and there's many other examples like this. Ja also came from another background. So I think that there will be, for good, talented individuals, there's always a niche and time to grow.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So, yeah, go ahead, Vivienne.
Yeah, no, I just think also it's about the new client. I think that today jewelry buyers are so much more involved in the whole kind of creative process, and that carries on right up to the buying, the purchasing experience. And I think they love the idea of discovering a designer that they feel in tune with, and being close to an individual. So there's the human element, the human touch. They know that the jewel they buy has had a personal creative vision behind it, and I think that that's also going to boost the market for individual designers. And of course we're in a cult of individuality in terms of personal expression. People wear jewelry as a powerful expression of individual style. So that drive towards individuality, I think, is just going to get stronger. But I mean, there's room for big brands and the individuals and in between too.
It's a big world. I think the big houses always have an extremely creative also, and they continue to be. They're looking for designers. I think if they come to GemGenève, they might discover the next talent of one of the big brands. It's a big world.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
If I could just ask one last question before we move to the Q&A. Time is racing, as always, during these events. For Vivienne, I think, some of the vintage jewellery dealers seem increasingly to be now stocking contemporary pieces. Why do you think that is? And are collectors, say, of 20th century pieces now increasingly also looking to acquire contemporary pieces?
Yes, I think so. I mean, Thomas mentioned it before. It is to do with recognizing that contemporary jewelry could be the antiques of the future. It's bringing that look up to date. And there's been a massive trend, as Thomas knows better than anyone, in terms of 20th century signed jewelry by the individual artists like Belperon, Boivin, the named designers. That's been the biggest trend, I think, hasn't it, in antique jewelry in recent years. So of course this follows in the same spirit, the same mood, and it's also, as Thomas said before, a question of scarcity on the market of the very best of designer antique jewelry. But I think it's a recognition. I mean, I think it's a fabulous recognition of the artistry of contemporary jewelers, really appreciating what they're doing, that they are taking jewelry to a new level.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move on to the Q&A. Let me just have a look at the questions for a moment. Hold on, bear with me. An anonymous questioner asks, how can a designer who is potentially interested in seeking to take part in the Vivarium contact Vivienne?
I think it's probably best to do it through GemGenève, through the website. Are there contact details on the GemGenève website? Maybe Jasmine knows.
We'll take care of that question.
Yeah, look at the contact us section on the GemGenève website.
Yes,
and
there should be.
Email will be filtered.
Yeah, because I'm in touch with the team all the time, obviously.
Right. Okay. There was a question. I'm struggling a little bit with the mouse here. Hold on, just bear with me. There was a question from Alessio Boschi, who's a very well-known Roman designer. Vivienne, how would you measure success for a designer at the show?
At the show?
At the Vivarium.
Yes. Well, of course, they hope for sales, and there have been sales, but I think it's more in terms of making contacts, building a network. I think it's also, validation for the designers. I think seems to have been very good. I don't know if you agree, Ida, for their self-esteem to get out there, stimulating. I think they've had a lot of stimulating ideas, but I think it's a networking. Obviously, it's meeting potential private buyers, and I think year on year we've had more private buyers, because actually I don't know if we said that GemGenève unusually is open to both trade and private buyers, because we feel that's the world we live in now. Everything is transparent and open, and I personally feel that's very important. So I think we're expecting more private buyers this year. I mean, the timing is very good in November, but I think that the designers, I'm thrilled and privileged to say that they've really enjoyed it. They found it stimulating, and they love meeting each other, as we said. They've made contacts with the gem dealers. I hope that it's generally a very enjoyable and positive experience for them. I think that's how we judge a success. I don't know, Ida, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, sometimes maybe the sales do not happen straight on the fair, but they can happen afterwards, and it's probably the most important is it's this broad audience they get to see, meet, and connect to, which is very important when you're an individual.
Yeah.
If I may add a little something, just it was our idea actually also for the exhibitors, those who manufacture jewelry or who deal, to discover designers. That was in the back of my mind, and actually we discovered that young girl, Camille Combremont.
Oh yes.
Very good at promoting, unfortunately, but it's also for the exhibitors to see what's going on in design.
Yeah. There's that exchange of, and actually we maybe have mentioned enough that as well as the Designer Vivarium, as well as the head, that's the Geneva Art School that we collaborate with, there's a section of emerging talent. So that's younger, exactly as it says, emerging talent, which is curated mainly by Ronnie Tota. So we cover the whole spectrum.
Exactly.
Yes, and it is that exchange. It's everyone meeting each other. Yeah, that's so important.
And there was the example of Emmanuel Tarpin, who has had a phenomenal surge.
Yeah, well, I think, I hope that Jasmine will agree, but we like to think that GemGenève was a real springboard for Emmanuel. He just made a few pieces that were really, really stunning, that he showed at GemGenève. He had a huge amount of press coverage, a lot of admiring visitors, and he went on to a meteoric rise to fame and success. And we'd like to think that GemGenève gave him that platform that really worked as a springboard for him, and he used it. I mean, full credit to him. He really used the platform very, very well.
One of the questions is asking, perhaps this is a question for Thomas, would you consider duplicating GemGenève and the Designer Vivarium around the world? Like Art Basel, would you have an edition in New York, in Hong Kong? Was this absolutely not in your plans?
We don't want to end up at Art Basel. It was a lot of work, especially for totally new.
Maybe there wouldn't be enough hours in the day.
Let's first get that edition over,
yeah.
and then we hope in springtime, maybe again, 2021. We'll see. But for the moment, no. Our capacities, and especially it's the team of Ronnie Tota, who's working hard day and night sometimes to get this edition off again in these special and difficult times.
Can you give any idea, say, Ida, about numbers of visitors to GemGenève and the Designer Vivarium in recent years? Is one question just received.
Yeah, I think last year we had, do you have that number?
About
by any chance? It's 4,900. Yeah, 4,900 visitors we had last year, which was quite a nice increase from the first year. This year is obviously going to be a question mark. I think loads of people are eager to come and visit and meet people again. So I'm optimistic, and I think it's really a show that has a potential to grow because of its mixture of different aspects that it is bringing in a nice atmosphere, in a really friendly and nice atmosphere. Not to
Okay, well, thank you so much. So our hour is now up, everybody. So I'd just like to thank you all so much for viewing today and tuning in. Do please make your way to GemGenève. It will take place between the 5th and the 8th of November at Palexpo, which is just very near Geneva Airport. Thank you so much to the panelists for joining me today. It's been a fabulous, very wide-ranging conversation. And it's great to hear about all the talents who have exhibited at the Designer Vivarium over the last 2 years. And we look forward very much to the splendid mix of talents who will be there in November this year. So thank you so much, Vivienne, Ida and Thomas for joining me today. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. I can see we've had a very good attendance today. So thanks so much for that. Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you, David, for giving us the opportunity to talk about it. Thank you. Bye,
everybody, and come and visit us at GemGenève and bring your friends.
And your money.
That comes afterwards.